Hi, everybody. So tonight I have Andrew Finlay with us, and I've been anxious to meet this man for a few years anyway. So we're finally making our first acquaintance, although I am somewhat aware of his story, but now we're going to get into the detail. And I think it's a really important commentary, not only on the opioid epidemic, but also on the nature of recovery and why some things work and why some things don't work, and how maybe we can garner some of these insights and come up with something better. So with that, Andrew, maybe just a little bit about yourself, where you live, your age, how long you've been in recovery, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So currently, I live in Wakefield, Mass. I grew up in Melrose, 35 years old. This February, I will be 6 years sober.
And that was after how many attempts do you think?
Countless, honestly. Yeah, I think every single day actively using, I made the commitment to try and stop. But actual physical attempts, I don't know, in the 20s maybe, like going away somewhere, whether it's detox, residential, sober house. Yeah, probably in the 20s.
And are you also a veteran of MAT programs?
No, my family had pushed it at certain times, but I always refused it because I knew myself and I was like, I'm not gonna get on some type of medication because I'm just gonna continue to get high anyway. So I don't want anything to impede that.
And beyond that, psychiatric care?
Uh, I had met with a psychiatrist at one point who just wanted to put me on a bunch of medications, and I was just like, yeah, I'm all set, type of deal. Yeah, but no formal diagnosis, no.
And how old were you when you started abusing opioids?
The opioids, 19, 20, in that range.
And
But
would you identify yourself as having been an addict prior to opioids?
yeah, long before. Yeah. With alcohol, coke. Yeah.
Early adolescence?
Yeah, I would say 17 probably. It started getting 17, 18. Uh, the behavior was certainly questionable. Um, but definitely a drug addict, even though I didn't really start facing the consequences really until opiates.
And what were the expectations of who Andrew Finlay would become from your family and community and teachers and coaches and such?
So I my family has always been supportive of me. And they sent me to a private high school so I could get the best education possible. And I flourished there. I was in the top percent of my class, and I had a full scholarship to college. All I had to do was pay room and board. So the expectation, and I went in biology major, was going to go the pre-med track. So growing up, that's kind of always what I wanted to do. Somewhere in the medical field. I hadn't really narrowed it down as far as which doctorate program or specialty, but that was the track. And I had it all in front of me. Like I said, full ride to college, very intelligent. All I had to do was kind of show up and continue to do what I had been doing for most of my life. And yeah, the world was pretty much at my feet.
And you did start college?
Yeah, I did about a year and a half.
Caught an opiate habit freshman year?
So more the coke, the alcohol, and the weed. Yeah, those were the big problem areas. Like, granted, I did dabble with opiates in college, but it didn't become, problematic. It was more severe alcohol, coke, and just smoking weed every day, yeah, for the most part.
So we're talking 2002-ish when you were in college?
Yeah, 2003.
And so by now, all over Massachusetts, people are dropping like flies from all walks of life to the OxyContin fiasco. So you
Oh,
certainly, you were aware of that, and you probably had
well
people
aware.
in your peer group that were.
Well aware of it. Well aware of it. And I went to college in downtown Boston. So back then, yeah, it was still like all over the news. You would hear about it, people sticking up pharmacies and doing that whole deal. And yeah, very well aware of the severity of the problem. Yeah, absolutely.
And did you have peers that were into this stuff?
Yeah, I remember being in high school, the first time I actually physically saw OxyContin. Yeah, I was in high school. Yeah, kids were strung out on it in high school.
And it was all oxys back in the day. There wasn't really dope to speak of.
No, it was all OCs. Yep, all OCs.
And so when did you catch that first habit?
So after my brief stint in college, where they politely asked me to leave because of my behavior, um, I kind of, I wouldn't say mellowed out, but I definitely wasn't going as hard as I was in college. I kind of bounced around for a bit, ended up back in Massachusetts. I worked for my family. So I still drank. I still like did coke on the weekends. Like nothing crazy, nothing problematic. So when eventually just running around in those types of circles, people drinking, people doing coke, people smoking weed, doing other stuff, it's inevitable that you're going to come across opiates. And so when I was introduced to it again, I had this kind of naive approach to it where I was just like, yeah, I'll kind of do anything. I've been able to kind of maintain a somewhat normal life without any issues. So taking it, um, that's when, after doing all of these other substances over, the better part of 3 years, it finally took hold of me. It was like I hadn't taken legitimate OxyContin. I've done like Percocet, Vicodin, like minor stuff in comparison to OxyContin. So once I finally took OxyContin, that's when it grabbed a hold of me. Yeah, when the
So you
opiates did.
started getting dope sick early 20s.
Yeah, so to be honest, I didn't run with OxyContin for a very long time. Matter of months, I would say. Matter of months before I progressed to heroin, that is.
I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, way too expensive to support a legitimate habit on that.
And so how long after you started getting into heroin did the whole sort of treatment merry-go-round begin?
Um, if I can remember, this is pretty accurate anyway, timeline. So OxyContin for about 3 to 4 months, then made the switch to heroin. Within a month of trying heroin for the first time, I was an IV user. And then the first run, probably 2 years, a solid 2.5 years, every day.
And was your family aware of this? Were you hiding from them? Were you doing it right under their noses?
They were not aware of anything at all. I had, my own apartment, was still working for my family. Granted, they were getting a little suspicious, but they didn't know exactly what was going on.
And whose decision was it to go into treatment the first time?
Mine. Yeah, mine. Yeah. I knew it was getting pretty ugly.
And so when you went into treatment, I'm assuming, I guess we shouldn't name facilities, but early on, you probably went to places that were pretty conventional, meaning
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy and that kind of thing. Little.
Yeah, absolutely. You're pretty much standard treatment. Yeah. Yeah.
And did you ever last very long after those treatments?
No, I would just make it through the detox
Oh, really? Yeah.
at best. Yeah. Yeah. Early on, I could complete. Early on, I would go to detox and do what I needed to do. But yeah, never really stayed long term. Early on, anyway.
Eventually, though, you're going to residential programs
Oh yeah, yeah. Eventually, yeah.
and lasting the whole time, or
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. Yeah. And then I would get into like a sober house and stuff like that. Um, See, I could do well in a structured environment. I could, but left to my own devices, inevitably I always get high.
mhm. And so eventually everything starts really, really, really steamrolling. And the gig is up. Everyone knows the truth about Andrew. You're what, in and out of these places? Are you ever bouncing and finding yourself homeless or couch surfing or?
Um, yeah, towards the end. Um, my family knew the first time I went away to treatment, I told them, this is like what it is. Full disclosure, IV heroin addict. And they had been very, very supportive, throughout. But towards the end is when, yeah, it really started getting ugly. I ended up in Florida at one point in treatment, got kicked out and was running around there homeless for a while. Yeah.
And what is, I mean, they're going through this trajectory of despair and hopelessness, and then get your some hope, and then hope dashed, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And what did that look like? Did it did your parents, were they split on Andrew's prospects? Did they come up the learning curve quickly? What happened?
So my mother passed away when I was a kid. I was 13. And so my dad, after the first treatment I went to, the facility that I went to, they had a support group for families. So he went to that religiously for a number of years, and was in like direct contact, with the facilitator for years. So he was pretty well educated, throughout. But the longer, I stayed out there and couldn't stay sober, yeah, he definitely lost hope. Um, and at the end, before I got sober, the last time I physically went away to treatment, he had resigned himself to the fact that, yeah, his son was just going to die from the disease and was completely devoid of hope. Yeah.
And he would tell you that.
Yeah, it was the last conversation we had, prior to me going in. He dropped me off at this place and he said, do what you need to do, and come home after. I don't want you to go out like on the street or anything like that. You just come home and die in the house. I would much prefer to find you than to get that phone call in the middle of the night. So yeah. And he's the type of person too. I don't want to sound like, I'm not trying to be dramatic. He's very straightforward. That's the relationship we've always had and we continue to have today. Doesn't try and guilt trip, just says things how they are. And it was just a very point blank conversation. Just like, yeah, you're going to die. I'm okay with it now. You've been going at this for a decade and you just can't get better. And it's terrible, but you just can't get better and you're going to die. And I would much rather you die in your home where I find you versus in the street and I have to get that awful phone call. So yeah, took a
And
toll on.
and were you taken aback with those words? Was that somehow different, or were you just not surprised?
Yeah, it was it was a shock. It was a shock. Yeah. It was like, obviously I knew I'm not an idiot, like I knew it affected him, and I knew it like really hurt him and took a toll on him. Like just for one instance, like he was so worried early on that I was a direct reason that he had a heart attack and ended up in MGH in the ICU for a couple of weeks, just from the stress level of me and my behavior and what I was doing. So I was aware that I was affecting him, but that last conversation, yeah, it really shook me. It's because my dad, he's always been there for me. He's my best friend, even to this day. And just to have someone who has always been so supportive, just say like, yeah, listen, you're not going to make it. Not only are you not going to make it, like, I'm okay with that now. I'm going to be sad, don't get me wrong, but I've come to terms with it. And I think it's time kind of you do too. This is just what it's going to be. So yeah, it was shocking. It was awful. It was an awful thing to hear. Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, I really think that maybe someday I should talk to your dad, because I think the world needs to know what that progression is for a parent to go from maybe being kind of naive and Pollyannish in the beginning to,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to bury this boy and it's just a matter of time.
yeah, yeah. And like knew it too. Like I said, like not a man who would try and guilt trip me into doing something or convince me to do something. No, that's like legit how he felt. He's like, yeah, you are dead. Dead.
And and towards the end there, so that's what, getting 2014-ish?
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
So fentanyl's beginning to hit the street, and the mortality rate, which was already high, is starting to spike.
Yep.
And I'm sure by then you knew a buttload of people who had died.
Oh yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
so, and I'm sure your father had been rubbing shoulders in those meetings with a lot of people who spoke to a lot of tragedy.
Yeah, he would tell me like the brief like glimpses that I would have of like sobriety, whether it would be 4 months here. I think the most I ever got was like 6. So when I was actually somewhat doing well, yeah, we would talk. He would tell me about like the meetings. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, like so and so, they lost their kid, they lost this kid, they're still using." Yeah, it's a really depressing stuff. Yeah.
And did you, the two of you or alone, reflect on the fact that your family had gotten caught up in a tsunami of addiction that was way bigger than, this wasn't Andrew, who's this kind of talented but perverse kid who took to taking drugs when he should have been going to class.
Yeah.
This was instead something really big, decimating a generation. Were you thinking in those terms?
I mean, I did, sure. I mean, just like being in treatment and just the active lifestyle of a drug addict, yeah, you come across all different types of people, all different walks of life. There's no cookie cutter for who or what makes a drug addict. It affects all individuals, no matter what your race is, your ethnicity, belief system, rich, poor. And he got a taste of that too, like going to these meetings, meeting with these families and developing relationship with these families. Sure, it affects all classes. Yeah.
And that last place you went to, is that the place that we're going to be talking about?
Eventually, yes. Yeah, but
When he had that conversation with you, were you going to that place?
no, nope, no. So prior to finding out about the program, which was nothing short of divine intervention, I had to go to a legitimate hospital, Like I wasn't afforded the luxury of a detox this last time around, just because my physical health was so poor, and I had a bunch of health issues. They thought I had endocarditis and some other blood infections. My liver was not in good shape, to say the least. So I had to get admitted to a hospital. So I had to kick in there, cold turkey. It was a good time after a 3.5 year run. Yeah.
Yeah, I come from that era that was
Yeah.
clonidine and trazodone. That's what I kicked on.
Yeah.
Um, so was it, so, okay, so let's just get your headspace. You're in this
Sure.
hospital, you're probably
Yep.
in worse physical shape than you've ever been.
Yep.
By now you have gone through a lot of the more well-known and some of the less well-known treatment facilities in the Northeast.
Yep.
And what is your own attitude about treatment and the recovery world? How are you thinking about it at that point?
At that point in time, um, I had seen, like I said, I was fortunate in the sense that throughout my using, my family was very supportive. So I went to your stereotypical state-run facilities, and I've been in the private treatment sector. I've been out of state to treatment. Like I've seen, again, the full spectrum of services available. And I have witnessed people who have gotten better, who were worse than me, should we say. But my overall attitude, I had done and tried literally everything, and I can't do it. So I had kind of resigned myself to just be one of the unfortunates who wasn't going to make it, because that's like what it is. People are dying at record numbers. And I had just kind of come to the belief that, yeah, I had tried everything, and I am just one of those individuals who is incapable of getting sober, and is just one of those individuals who's just meant to die from the disease.
Did
Yeah,
you,
that's what was going through my head in the hospital. It's just that's just what it is. What it is.
and did you ever try to pinpoint what it was about you that was resistant to treatment? Did you
I
have any
mean,
sense of
looking,
that, or?
yeah, looking back now, obviously hindsight's always 2020. Yeah, I can pinpoint it exactly now. Sure. I was not ready to change everything about my life. I wasn't. I
So what
wasn't.
did you want to hang on to? Can you pinpoint that? What were the things specifically that about the lifestyle that you didn't want to let go of?
Hmm. Good question. Um, I honestly, I don't know if I could ever be comfortable in my own skin. I think ultimately, on top of just a lot of stuff that I had experienced, in my life, not willing to address certain issues and move past certain things, for sure set me back. But ultimately, I don't know. I'm lazy, you know? I don't want to have to do like the hard, in-depth work on myself. I don't. It's extremely uncomfortable and it's painful. You're going to have to make sacrifices. I mean, you know how it is. It's, if you truly want to get better, there's a lot that goes in back of it. It's not you just go away to treatment, you can do a couple things and miraculously your life gets better. No, it doesn't work that way. And I don't think I was ever really fully up to the task, or wanted to, if I can be
How'd your,
completely honest. Yeah.
how'd your conscience treat you when you were sober?
As far as,
What you did to your dad, all the scams and angles you ran, missed opportunities, girlfriends, whatever. How'd your conscience treat you when you were sober?
um, certainly wasn't pleasant at times. Yeah. Obviously, getting high, you don't really have to think about the things that you do. You can kind of push it to the side. But sober, like, yeah, certainly took a toll on me. Yeah. not just my family, literally every single person that I came into contact with, I ruined their life. Not only their life, I ruined their family too. That's just the type of addict I was. I would just ruin whole families, which is awful, and I would think about it in periods of sobriety, and it would just, yeah, a lot of guilt attached to it. Sure.
So you're in the hospital,
Yep.
probably got the IV and you're kicking and the nurses are coming by and I know it. And somebody tells you about some very different treatment option. Is that what
No,
happened?
it didn't happen. It didn't happen in the hospital.
Okay.
So how do I go about it? So my overall background as far as spirituality and religion, right? So I was raised Catholic, the whole nine, like baptism, confirmation, first communion, all that stuff.
Right through
Went,
high school.
yep, private Catholic high school. Obviously fell away from, my belief system and my faith due to one, just being a kid and being stupid and not thinking it's important. And then once drugs took over, yeah, reconnecting with some sense of spirituality. Yeah, I was never fully able to do that. And so my belief system, which I believe today, that stuff, it definitely fell to the wayside and was the farthest thing from my mind. And so when I went into the hospital, I was aware that it was the month of February, but that's about it. I had no idea the date or what physical day it was. I just knew I had to go to a hospital because I was afraid that my organs were literally shutting down, honestly. And so when I went into the hospital and then I checked in and everything that we've already talked about, just like that state of true hopelessness, where I believed that I wasn't meant for this world and that this disease was going to kill me. Went through the emergency room and they're like, yep, we're admitting you. And I was like, yep, I already know. We're going to put you in a room upstairs by yourself because you're detoxing and we can't do anything. So we're going to try and make you as comfortable as possible. Okay, that's fine. And the first person that I saw who came into my room, it was a nurse. And first thing I noticed about her, she had an ash cross on her forehead. So that day was Ash Wednesday that I went into the hospital. And again, I had no recollection, but for some reason, I saw that and that sparked something in me. Very, very minimal. I can be honest, very minimal. But now, obviously, more firmly, I very much so believe in we are given signs in this world, whether or not we choose to act on them. It's up to us. But there are only a certain amount of opportunities for the alcoholic and the addict to get better. Eventually your ticket's going to get punched. And I knew my ticket was going to get punched. And so I saw this cross on this nurse's forehead and she was very sweet to me. And I was like, oh, well, Ash Wednesday, start a Lent. Should probably give up heroin. I guess that would be a good thing to do. Kind of made a joke of it, honestly.
Right.
But again, I did not sleep when I was in that hospital, period. I was there for 4 days. The third day, I hadn't talked to anyone. I hadn't talked to my dad at all. So I called him and was just like, hey, so been in the hospital for a couple of days. I'm not really in good shape. And he's like, okay. So very nonchalant. He's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I should probably go away somewhere. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I'll send you away. Set it all up. Let me know when you're gonna leave and you go wherever you need to go. And I was like, okay. So I sent a text message. I reached out. And I had a bed for me. And they said, yep, you can come right from the hospital. Come on up. And I was like, okay. So I called my dad back and I was discharged on a Saturday and I went in treatment that same day.
Somewhere you'd been before?
Yeah, the Plymouth House. Yeah, they accepted me back. The first time I was there, I did not do very well, and I made a very, very, very big mess there. So just for them to accept me back was miraculous. But they did, for whatever reason. And so I went there right from the hospital. 4 days sober, not sleeping, still very, very sick.
I bet.
Yeah. And still not fully believing that I could get better or that there was a chance. But I knew I had to do something. And at least at that point, I was just willing to stay sick and at least just go, just to see what would happen. And so he took me up there, and that's when we had that conversation. He was
Oh,
like, yeah,
okay.
sure.
I
Yeah,
see.
sure. Yeah, right. So he
So you
drops
got
it down.
yourself to the hospital.
Oh yeah, yeah. I got myself there, and he took me up there afterwards, and that's when we had the conversation in that front lobby. Just like, yeah, I'm not going to come visit you or anything because I don't really want to see you, and you're going to die anyway. So I'll pay for you to be here, and then you just come home after, and yeah, you die in the house. It's like, okay. He's like, I'm going to set everything up too. I was talking with the funeral home and all of that stuff, and I was like, cool. Well, we'll see you in 30 days.
Jeez.
Yeah, yeah. It was rough.
Okay, so you finished treatment there?
So, yeah. So I again started, going through the whole process. They started me that very night, 2 hours after being admitted. Yeah. Yeah, they did not take pity on me. They're just like, oh, so yeah, you're really sick, huh? Okay, well, we're gonna start right now then. I was like, cool, all right. So went through everything, and it was when I took the third step, which is probably, I don't know, the 100th third step that I had taken, honestly. So, but that's when like the change really happened, if I can be honest. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can say looking back, being involved in like the 12-step process, like sporadically throughout my attempts of getting sober, I had never honestly prayed or really developed any sense of a spiritual life the way that I know it to be now and what's necessary. But for the first time, this last time around, I can say I genuinely, wholeheartedly said a prayer when I took that third step. Yep.
And you felt different.
Yeah.
You still don't, but you felt different?
Yeah, because it was genuine. The prayer was something to the effect of, if I'm not meant to die the life of a drug addict, if I'm meant to escape from this just evil and this sickness, then you're going to have to put a plan in front of me. Ultimately, it was more of a demand than a prayer, but I was just like, I need an answer.
Kind of a show yourself prayer.
Kind of, yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, and it has to be like right now, because I don't have like the time to wait. I'm sorry, it's got to be like real quick right now. It's got to be something serious and something drastic. And if you do this, whatever you put in front of me, I promise you I will do it. But if I'm not meant to die, you're gonna have to kind of get things going real quick. Yeah.
It's a great story. I'm a bit of a connoisseur of third steps.
Yes.
Most of them kind of go the way you described. But then there are these people that have these ones like, I put myself in that category. James Ryan, Joe Curran.
Yep.
They say that something happens.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily mean that the horizon looked any more easier, but
No, it was very bleak.
very bleak. But there's something in me that's ready to go.
Yeah.
I'll go into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I slept for
Oh, did you really?
the first time in 3.5 weeks for more than 2 hours. Yep. That night. Yeah.
So you finish what, 30 days or something, or?
Yeah. So after that third step, that prayer got answered 2 days later. It was at random. a kid who was involved in the Communita Chenacolo program, someone that I knew of. I had never met him personally, but I had heard about him for years. One of my good friends, it's actually his cousin. And so at random during one of the afternoon groups, this kid ends up coming to the Plymouth House to speak. He, again, somewhat very similar to myself, a very long history of drug abuse, been through every known state program, been through the Plymouth House, I think 4 times, incapable of staying sober, this individual. And he was back home for the first time in 2.5 years, I want to say, just to spend a quick little visit with his family. And he took the time away from his family to drive all the way up to Plymouth, New Hampshire in the middle of winter. And it was a brutal winter, just to share his experience, over 2.5 years sober. And so he came, again, like impromptu, he came up and he spoke to this group about this program. And the instant I saw him, and he came up with his cousin, my friend, who I hadn't seen in 3 years probably at that point, just due to me being out on runs. So he was there, and as soon as I saw him, I was like, whoa, what's going on? And then his cousin shared his experience within this community program. And I knew without a doubt 100% that I was the only one in the room that was meant for. I knew it was an answered prayer. Like, he was there specifically saying exactly what he was saying for me and for me alone. And I can't really accurately describe how I felt in that moment, but I knew wow, okay, there really is something out there. You answered my prayer in like record time.
You
And
felt like the one sheep.
yeah, 100%. And it was like a double-edged sword too, because like the program itself, it is the most difficult, challenging thing that absolutely anyone could ever do. And I was like, oh, you must have a sense of humor, because you gave me an answer and it's the most difficult thing in the world, that who in their right mind would do it.
So let's talk about the name of the program just for the
Sure.
audience. Communita Chenacolo.
Yes, that's
And,
right. Yeah, good job.
and Cenacolo means,
The upper room in Italian, the Last Supper.
so
Yep.
this is the community of the upper room,
Yep.
or the upper room community.
Yeah. Upper room community. Yeah.
Amazing. So this program, I take it, is free,
Free. Absolutely.
and it is part of the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Now, is it related to a certain order or anything, or?
So they, over the years, they have their own order now. Yeah. So they do have, lack of a better word, like community priests and community nuns. So they were granted their separate order. Yeah. But they, prior to that, like, yeah, they were sanctioned and affiliated with the Catholic Church. Yeah.
And so you went to Alabama, is that right?
So it's it took, it's somewhat of a, it can be anyway, in my case it can be somewhat of a lengthy process to get in. It's not just like you walk in off the street and they welcome you with open arms. That you have to get in touch with your regional contact, and they relay the information to the director of the program for the United States. They set up an interview where you go down, you fly down to Florida, which is where the main house is. You spend a couple of days there in the actual community. And then you meet with him at the end of it, and he'll kind of decide if he's going to accept you or not, pretty much. And so once I heard him share his experience, I immediately went to my contact at the P house and was just like, yeah, so definitely going to go do this because I am meant to do this. It was a sign. You can call me crazy, but like I have to do this. And if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And they were all for it. So I stayed in touch with this kid my entire time that I was up there until he ended up going back. He gave me all the information for the regional contact. So I got the ball rolling with that. I told my dad about it, and he just thought I was crazy. So got the ball rolling with that. And it was months before I could um, get an interview to fly down there. So
Right.
yeah, so we kind of came up with like a game plan. I finished my time up there, and I went to a sober house after that back in Mass, to await whenever it is that I could fly down. So
And never did you think, well, look, all this time has gone by. I feel pretty good. I have that third step up there. Maybe I don't need to go. Did that ever cross your mind?
it did, yeah, but just as like a passing thought, not like a conviction. Like, oh yeah, now I'm doing really well in this sober house. I have like 4 months sober. I've made my way, pretty significantly deep into the step process this time around. Made a lot of personal growth and progress, but it wasn't an actual rational thought that I wasn't gonna do it. I one of my flaws, um, prior to leading up to me getting sober, was that I could never follow through with anything. I can certainly talk a very sweet game, but the follow through, no. My word kind of was meaningless. If I said I was going to do something, I usually never did it. And so that was my one of my big kind of revelations with taking a third step this last time around was, if I say something, I have to follow through with it. And that's what it was since day one, since I first heard this kid's speech. It's what I told my contacts up there, the owners of the sober house. Like, this is what it is. This is the end goal. As soon as they tell me I can go, this is like what I'm doing. I'm gonna try and not let anything get in the way of it. And I didn't. But certainly there were doubts. Yeah, absolutely.
And when the phone call finally came, did things start moving quickly at that point?
Yeah, pretty much. I had, when did I go down? April or May, I believe, for the interview. And so me and my dad flew down. It was nice. We spent a week down there. So I believe it was 3 days like in the program. Um, and then we did like the interview, and he's like, okay, well, if you want to come down, we'll accept you in. We'll call you soon with a date. And they did, and it was June 8th. June 8th was the day. So it was pretty quick. Once I actually physically went down to being able to go down there permanently, yeah, it was pretty quick.
And you did go to Alabama, am I right about that?
I lived there at one point. Yeah, I flew down to Florida first. Yeah, Florida first.
And so there was the first part of this program involved what?
Whew. So let's see how to accurately describe it. So it's worldwide, obviously. It was founded in Italy, so that's where the initial mother house is, and then it has grown exponentially from there. So they have houses in Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, Slovakia, Croatia, Argentina, obviously the United States, And it came to the States in the 90s. So there are 3 homes in the United States, 2 in Florida and 1 in Alabama. So they pretty much just pick and choose. You know, you do not have a choice where you end up or what you want to do. They literally make the choice for you. And so when I entered, it was, you're going to this house in Florida. I'm just like, okay, sounds good. All of the houses, and again, worldwide, they are situated on, you know, pretty decent acreage of land. So each home is self-sustaining, meaning you raise, you know, livestock, you have gardens, you grow your own food. The stuff that you do not produce, all of your other essential items, hygiene, other food, stuff like that, all based off donations. So it's not like you just running out of food, you go to the grocery store and you go buy a bunch of stuff. No, it doesn't work that way. All donations. So once you are there, you are there. Your job is to take care of the house, maintain the property, grow your own food. Um, they take literally every creature comfort away from you. You do not have like a cell phone. There's no music. There's no phone calls. There's no access to a phone. There's no access to the internet. Don't have an iPod. There's no music. All your stuff's based off donations, and you literally work to sustain the property and just like your overall livelihood. Um, and heavily rooted in prayer. So their overall philosophy, you know, the pathway to growth is through sacrifice, a lot of personal sacrifice.
Ora et labora, right?
Mm-hmm.
Working
Mm-hmm.
with prayer.
Yep. Yep.
And so the prayer is, I imagine, communal.
Yes. So again, it is rooted in, you know, the Catholic Church. So it has its roots in Catholicism. So there are plenty of people who come who have, you know, substance use problems and stuff, who are still like practicing their faith. There are some people who have fallen away, like myself. There are some people who have no belief system whatsoever, or more Eastern philosophy. They don't, it's not a requirement. It's not like, oh, you have to be a Christian or a Catholic to come here. They really don't care about that at all. You can kind of develop your own personal faith, like as a result of the program. If you do what they are suggesting you to do, it's designed for you to have a spiritual experience. I guess that's the best, most accurate way I can describe it. It literally forces you to have an experience.
But they're
But the
not.
prayer
Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
I was going to say, just like the prayer aspect itself. So there are 3 times throughout the day that's like the communal form. So you start your day 6 a.m. in the chapel, on your knees, praying as a group every day. That's what it is. There's no sleeping in. There's none of that. It's like, no, this is how you start your day. And again, it's something, you know, in my previous attempts at sobriety, I kind of get it now. Old school AAers be like, yeah, as soon as you get up, like hit your knees. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, buddy. But like, I see the value in that now. And that's like how they start every day. You wake up and you up at 6 a.m. and you are in that chapel no later than 6:10 on your knees praying. Yeah. And they have a couple, like I said, 3 communal times throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, you have, you know, personal time if you want to go in and kind of do your thing.
Do you have something like a spiritual advisor or confessor or anything like that?
They do. Yeah. Yeah, they do. They work with certain dioceses in like the local area. So wherever the house is situated, it's connected with, you know, local priests. Yep. Yep.
And how long are the communal prayer sessions?
Morning, 45 to an hour. Afternoon, you're looking, yeah, like a half hour. Evening, about 45. So
And is this sort of the first phase?
no, that's every day.
Every day for the duration, the same structure throughout
Same
the whole
structure.
thing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's no phases. This is going to be your way of life. This is how we're going to teach you how to live. And again, their overall philosophy, it's just like how people used to live hundreds and thousands of years ago. You worked hard, put in a good, honest day's work to support yourself and your life, and you develop some sense of spirituality.
And at some point, though, they start moving folks around. Do they make certain decisions based on your progress or something? To
I mean,
what's
kind of, yes, yes and no, honestly. So despite everything that I said, so like the sacrifice, all that stuff. So a lot of it sounds great to people when they hear it. It's just like, oh yeah, that's exactly like what I need. That structure, that routine, like developing a sense of faith. Like I said, it literally forces you into having it. The kicker is they ask you minimum, they ask you for 3 years of your life. So it's not like you come for a quick fix, like, oh yeah, I'll be home in a couple months. So if you're serious about it and you want our help, 3 years. Give us 3 years of your life. Most people aren't willing to make that type of sacrifice. It's hard enough getting someone to stay 30 days in treatment,
oh
let
yeah.
alone let alone 3 years.
And so, did you see a lot of attrition?
Yeah. For the most part, though, people stay.
You
For the
did.
most for the most part, people stay. It's kind of the last haven for the alcoholic and the addict if you end up in a place like that. You've tried literally every other route. And yeah, yeah. It's kind of like your last shot. But I obviously it was difficult early on, but I still like stood by, I was going to do whatever it is that they asked me to do, and I made the sacrifice. But as far as like the movement questions, so they can move you anytime they want for whatever reason that they want. They can come to you in the morning and just say, hey, so you're going to go to Alabama. We're going to take you in about 2 hours. Go pack your things. Or, and again, it doesn't happen till you've been in the program for a couple of years, obviously, where they would send you overseas, but it's the same process pretty much. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, so you've been here about 2 years. We're going to give you this opportunity. You're going to get on a flight next week. We're going to send you to wherever it is we feel overseas. Literally like that. There's no choice. I mean it, like you don't have any choice. There's no negotiation. This is what you're going to do. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay here. That's fine. But like, this is what we feel best. Ultimately, it's designed to teach you to have some trust and some faith that whatever it is that's going to happen, you're going to be just fine no matter what, and you be able to handle it.
Yeah, yeah. And did you start having, obviously, your relationship to prayer must have really evolved.
Yeah, it took a while though. It took a while. Yeah. And again, like prior to going there, I could, like I said, I can talk a big game, like, oh yeah, I've been through the step process. I know the book like the back of my hand. I know what it means to pray, blah, blah. I had no idea what prayer was or how to even do it. Yeah. So I took their suggestions. Obviously, I participated, but I took it a step further because I understood that if I did not develop a sense of spirituality and connection to some higher existence in this world, that I was not going to survive. And I knew that. And
Do
that,
you, what do you mean you took it a step further?
so like I said, I participated in all the communal stuff, but I would go after hours every night, and I was digging around in their chapel, and I found this novena prayer, and it was 15 prayers that you say. It takes about a half hour to do, and it's a year-long novena. They call it a novena, but it's not a novena. Novena is 9 days, but That's what they called it. And it was this grouping of 15 prayers that you say every day for a year, and a half hour a day, more or less, half hour to 40 minutes to do it properly. And so early on in my journey there, I knew how important developing this type of connection was just to my overall survival. I knew if I didn't develop this connection, I wasn't going to live. And so I made, the commitment that's like, okay, I will do this for the year, um, with the intention behind it just being help me to understand what having faith is. And I did that for a year, which was difficult. Sounds easy, but it's difficult. At the end of the day, you're exhausted, and it's just to take
Right.
that extra half hour, 40 minutes, and just to go in there and do it. Yeah, but I did it every day for a year.
And so, what kind of things happened to you through this process?
Through that year, specifically with that.
With the work in prayer, I mean, what if you could speak to the kind of transformation you felt?
So specifically with like the type of work that you do there, right? So obviously, maintaining the actual physical grounds, like the property they're set on, a number of acres. That's kind of a pain to keep that up, especially in Florida with the amount of rain and like it's a lot to maintain it. And just growing like your own food to sustain a house full of 20 to 30 guys, not to mention just the projects and upkeep on the physical structures themselves. You develop one, like a sense of accomplishment that you are actually physically capable of doing this type of work, and it really instills like a sense of gratitude. And again, for me specifically, with my family background and like the support that I've had, like, and say like I was spoiled as a kid, I was given every advantage. I never really was truly grateful for much of anything that I had. I took things for granted. All my family will always be there to bail me out. All my family will do this for me. Right. I had to learn how to be grateful for like the simplest of things. So simply, working in a garden, growing a plant from a seed that turns into food that you eat, not only for yourself, but for an entire community, it really makes you appreciative and grateful for even the smallest things that you have. And that's something that, again, if I didn't learn that lesson, I would never survive. I would never survive in, the outside world.
And that
Yeah.
was organic process.
Yep. 100%.
It wasn't because somebody hit you with a bumper sticker of attitude of gratitude.
No, absolutely not. It's, again, there are those like cliche slogans, I guess, lack of a better word for it. And some people, like, it works. They can kind of think their way into that. And yeah, I'm grateful, or make like a gratitude list. Yeah, sure, that stuff helps. But for me, the type of drug addict that I was, no, I have to physically learn that. Like, I have to physically experience it, and I have to do it consistently in order for it to stick.
And then, am I mistaken, but were you put to work in service of others at some point?
Um, yeah, so in a general sense, how it works. So there is a director for the United States. He oversees all of the houses. He's based out of one, but he is the only administrator, for lack of a better word. The houses themselves are run by members. So if a member is in the community for a number of years, he would take charge of the house and run the house, like make the responsibilities. Yeah, it's all run by the residents. He just kind of oversees everything and make sure, nothing's really going wrong or anything like that. So eventually, if you last and you stay and you are a good fit, yeah, you are put, in charge of a house. And again, it's just like another way of sacrificing. So your job obviously is to make sure everything in the house runs smoothly, to give everyone their responsibilities, to be there to listen to people, to guide people. Yeah, to literally serve the other members. Yeah, it's not like a cushy job running like a silver house or something like that, like up here or anywhere else. It's, yeah, you literally, your job is to serve the needs of the house and the other members. So
Care of
yeah.
souls.
Huh?
Care of souls.
Yeah, seriously, absolutely. And so I was put in that position pretty early on. Yeah, yeah, pretty early. Yeah, year, little over a year and a half, maybe somewhere in that range.
So given that you've got all this extensive experience with residential treatment, how would you compare the difficulties, or for lack of a better term, drama that you found in this program relative to the other ones?
Completely different. There is no comparison. Yeah, they're really. So within, again, like within the community and how their philosophy is, you look at the disease of addiction in a nutshell, it's a disease of comfort. I'm going to do anything and everything I can in order to get outside of myself. I don't like how I feel, so I'm going to use something to feel how I want to feel. Yes, that works with alcohol and drugs, but it also goes far beyond that. People use technology, social media, food, the gym, work, sex, gambling, money, clothes. Literally, it could be anything that you could use within the framework of the disease as an escape. In the community, they rob you of all of it. They take away all your comforts for a reason because there's no outlet, there's no escape. You are literally forced into dealing with your inner demons. So the stuff that would come out would be stuff that's like real, like people's real issues, people's real problems. They don't have, again, there's no outlet, there's no escape. So that's the stuff that we deal with. Yeah.
And were you surprised at the things that came out of you? Meaning, did you think you knew your own soul in a way that proved to be wrong? Were there things inside of you that you didn't realize were there?
I think, yeah, to some degree, but also there were things that I had buried that I didn't want to honestly take a good look at. I knew they were there in the background, but I had pushed them out of my mind so much just because they were horrible. And like I didn't like viewing myself like in that way. Specifically, I actively using how I viewed human beings. I viewed them as a means to an end. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. I'm going to tell you whatever story I need to. I will be extremely mean and cruel, or I will sweet talk you to death in order to get what I want. And that's how I was. And like I hated looking at that. And like I had the inability to care about people simply as human beings.
Did
But
you
the
have did you have doubts about yourself in terms of ever having those capacities? Did you wonder if you were psychopathic?
in a sense, yeah, but I just like didn't know if I could actually care about like another human being from like a standpoint of straight empathy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know if I could ever be empathetic towards another human being without expecting something in return. I didn't know because I hadn't lived that type of a lifestyle pretty much like ever, you know.
Did you do you feel like you had unresolved issues about losing your mom?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, absolutely. Yeah. All that stuff comes up because again, like I said, they take away all sources of comfort from you, all pathways for relief. It's literally removed from you. So those things come out one way or another. And why they recommend 3 years, simply for that reason. Things just don't come out overnight. It's a process. It's a long process.
So you left there how long ago?
Uh, this past August was 2 years.
And
So,
what was the transition like coming back to this,
oh, it was
this world?
crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, yeah. I remember, yeah, just like in the simplest sense, like I remember coming home for the first time. Um, they send you home usually around 2 years or more, somewhere in that range, where you get to go home for, a week or two and like spend time with your family and stuff like that, and return back. So I remember the first time I did it, I went at about 21 months, 22 months in. Um, I had some like health stuff going on that I needed to kind of take a look at and like come up with like a treatment plan for. So I went home and I just remember like being in the airport. It was like the first real public place I had been in almost 2 years, and just like sensory overload. Like it was crazy. Just like people walking around, like music, phone, like all this stuff. It was a sensory overload. It was crazy. I felt truly alone. It was wild. Yeah. And like the same experience, like finally leaving. Yeah. Readjusting to the world. Yeah.
Did they, did they, well, I guess letting you go home at 2 years sort of prepares you for what's coming at 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like in a general sense too, like going home, like it's not just, yeah, you go and you see your family and stuff, but you actually start to think about like a plan, like what you're thinking of doing, where you're going to end up after, what the overall goal is going to be, kind of figuring some of that stuff out. Yeah.
And so when you came back, did you find the discipline of prayer, not that you're doing it the same way, but did you find it was essential still?
Absolutely, 100%.
And
Yeah.
if you don't mind me asking, what's your prayer life like today?
Every day. It's ingrained every day. Every day. I pray constantly throughout the day. It's something that was always recommended to me. It's not just like oh, you wake up and you hit your knees and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that stuff's important and it works for people, but um you have to be in like a constant state of prayer. Someone at the Plymouth House told me that one time. And it was my first time up there. They were like, hey, like a constant state of prayer. And I was like, okay, I guess. I don't know what that means, but I get it now. It is. It's not just like physically praying, but it's in my overall life, the way I treat people, how I try and go above and beyond to put others' needs in front of my own. Like I try, and again, a human being, I'm far from perfect, but I try and live my life in that constant state of prayer. Yeah, try to.
And what's your relationship to Christianity now?
So for me, I've known like plenty of people who go there again, like fallen away from the faith and they have like a reconversion, or people who had no concept of faith, they like convert and go through like all the sacraments and stuff like that. So my experience definitely drew me back to like the Catholic faith. And again, it's just my personal experience. Um, a lot of my time while I was in the community, I reflected a lot about the events that led me to them. And for me, again, like I'll stand by it. I was directly called there. I was directly called back to the faith for a very specific reason. And it's something that like I couldn't ignore it. Like the signs were literally right in front of my face. It was a call for me to like come back to the faith. And if I did, and I embraced it, I would get to experience that true freedom that I've heard talked about with people who were well for years. And so yeah, it's still going strong to this day. It's my own personal like belief. It's what works. It's what works for me. And it doesn't like influence like my opinion of what like other people do. I know plenty of people in the recovery scene, they don't follow any specific religion, but they believe in God.
Yeah.
They know something is there that is driving and guiding them and has personally called them. And for me, that was just the personal call. It was the route of the Catholic faith. I couldn't ignore it. So yeah, still believe in it. Went to church with my dad this morning.
That was my next question. Your dad,
Yeah.
what's he make of all this?
Um, nothing short of miraculous. Nothing short of miraculous. Yeah. A true miracle. Yeah. A true miracle. He gets teary-eyed when he talks about it. Yeah.
I get teary eyed just thinking about the man.
Yeah.
And
A true miracle. Yeah, a true miracle.
an addiction cost him more than you. It cost him your brother too. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the quick little backstory with that, if you want me to get into it.
I do.
So went home for the first time, like I said, around 20, 21, 22 months. Came home. He had set up a bunch of appointments with a GI doctor, IV drug addict, have Hep C, got to get that taken care of. So we got the ball rolling with that. It took a little bit. I had to have biopsies and fiber scans and all this stuff done. Went back, and at the time when I went home, I was running a house down there. So did what I needed to do up here, got everything set up, went back and continued to run the house for the next like 8 months or something like that. And the director of the program came to me, and he talked to me about it. He was like, hey, so we are actually going to send a small group of Americans overseas. And the time that I went, it was when there were a bunch of terrorist attacks in France, the ISIS terrorist group. So they were very wary about sending people over. But he came up to me and he was just like, hey, so we're sending a small group over there. You've done a phenomenal job and we are very, very happy with everything you're doing here. If you want to stay here and run the house, we love it. But you've kind of earned the opportunity to go experience a life abroad if it's something that you want to do. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he was like, why don't you call your dad and kind of ask him? And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, give him a call. So I did. I called him and he was like, yeah, no, you should take it as like another sign that it's like the path you were meant to go. And like, I support it fully, like go and do it. So I told him, and he was like, okay, sweet. And he was like, why don't you go home again for Christmas? And I was like, what? And they don't send people home at the holiday time naturally, tensions, the stress and stuff like that, they never do. But he was like, no, we believe in you, we have faith in you, you've proven yourself. Go home, go have a normal Christmas for the first time in over 15 years with your family, and then hop on a plane from Logan, because it's just easier that way, and we'll meet you over in Italy. And I was like, all right, sign me up, let's go. And so yeah, went home for the first normal Christmas in 15 years. And yeah, my brother overdosed and died 2 days before Christmas. Yeah, I've been home. When did I get home? The 19th, maybe, or the 20th of December. Yeah, and he died on the 23rd. So
Your
yeah,
little,
huh?
your little brother?
Older brother. Yeah,
What was his name?
Stephen. Yeah. My dad never made the connection, but I did. And again, just like another sign for me. Passed away on December 23rd. 6 years prior to that, I had overdosed and I had been dead for well over 5 minutes before my dad had this idea to come back to the house. And he found me dead in the house on December 23rd. And for whatever reason, paramedics ended up coming. And after a very large amount of Narcan, I ended up coming back for whatever reason. But it was just like that again, set of circumstances, out of the house, not knowing why he should go back, but he knew he had to go back. And sure enough, there he was, dead on the floor. And then flash forward 6 years, same day, brother dies, overdose. Yeah.
Are you the only two children?
Yeah, the only two. Yeah.
What's your father's name, if you don't mind me asking?
Alan. Alan. But it was just, it showed me two things, really. One, that I had actually changed, because my first thought was obviously like him, but immediately like my family and what I could do. And after I had, consoled them because we were both like crying in the kitchen, um, I took a walk and immediately went to the church and prayed. It was snowing that night too. I remember it was kind of a nasty night, but walked down to the church in front of Virgin Mary, prayed for him, asked for some help, for some direction. Like, what do I have to do? What can I do right now for these people that I love? And the answer came. It was simple. You do everything for them because they were in complete shock that he died. And so it was the first time in my life that I could actually kind of take charge of the family and did everything. Funeral arrangements, everything. The eulogy, did the whole nine. Yeah, did the whole nine. And it was nice to be home, to be there for my family when they needed me the most. But again, the most difficult decision I ever had to make, because again, 3 weeks later, I was looking at a one-way ticket to Europe. Could I make that decision? Do I leave my family and continue on this journey? What do I do ultimately? And it just comes back to that third step I said, well over 2.5 years ago at that point. Committed to it. I'm going to do whatever is set in front of me because I know that's what you want me to do. My family agreed. And just go. Yeah. 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 And so I did. The most difficult decision I had to make at that point, though, bar none. Yeah. Having to leave my family in the wake of that tragedy to go see where this journey ended up. Yeah.
And so today you work in the field,
Yeah.
and how does that treat you?
So when I was overseas, that's when I really started to take a good look and like reflect, and obviously like brought it into like my overall prayer life. Like, okay, Andrew, 32, 33 years old, like what's the direction that we're going in with your overall life? It did always came back to, helping people, obviously, but for me specifically in my time over there, I felt like I was called to the field. Just because you're an alcoholic and an addict and you got better does not mean you can work in the field and you're meant to work in the field. I've seen too many people with that type of an attitude thinking they can do it and it doesn't end well, and treatment can eat you alive. Can eat you alive. But for me, it was always there. Always, always, always there that I was meant to work in the field in some capacity. And in my reflection and prayer over there, I knew that was like what I wanted to do. Yeah, get into the field. Yeah.
Well, this has been well worth the wait.
Certainly has. Yeah, it certainly has.
Um, God knows we need you. Good stuff. So is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I mean, just in like a general sense, I firmly believe, and like I'll stand by it in my dying day, every single alcoholic and every single drug addict can get better. There is no one who is truly hopeless. If that were the case, then I wouldn't be sitting here today, almost 6 years sober, with probably the most beautiful life that anyone could possibly ask for. But again, it comes with that measure of sacrifice, of true personal growth, talking about things that you never dreamt that you would have to talk about, and changing one's life. But it's certainly possible. People can do it. People do it all the time. And it's something like I preach personal life and professionally to people. It's no matter what sacrifice you have to make, no matter what difficult decision you have to make, no matter what you have to do, the benefits far outweigh the sacrifice. And again, like I had to experience that myself, going to a place that's asking you to give up 3 years of your life, and I did about 3.5, not knowing like who's three. You're asking me for 3.5 years. That's a big chunk going into my early 30s. Like, what am I gonna do? It's gonna set me so far back. Like, how am I gonna do X, Y, and Z? Just like the crazy delusional thoughts of an addict.
Yeah.
But 3.5 years in, leaving, not really knowing, I have everything that I could have ever wanted and then some in life. The benefits far outweigh the sacrifice, no matter what it is. Yeah. And it's all worth it, of course. Yeah. It's all well worth it. And again, personal belief, we're all called to faith. It's the end of the road, right? And specifically for the alcoholic and the addict. If you truly want to get better, you have to develop that sense of faith. And it's out there. It's waiting for us to be called. And it's just when the time comes, you have to answer the call because you don't know when your ticket's going to get punched. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deep mysteries in here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think the audience is going to benefit mightily from this.
I hope so.
Well, I think so.
I
So
hope.
thank you so much. Peace.
No, my pleasure.